Hey, welcome. I am Kath Nolan, once high-performing perfectionist good girl turned goddess of balance, kicking even bigger goals. This is the podcast where we make balance doable for busy, overstretched working women. Embracing your voice, your feminine power and energy allows you to truly step into greatness for the sake of you and all you hold dear. This is balance. The episode you're about to hear is one of my earliest episodes when the podcast was called Don't Be Asked and our focus was on building courage. Since then, you have evolved and so have I. You have fierce courage when it comes to others. And now it's time to balance what you're willing to do for others with what you're willing to do for yourself. Let's go, my friend. Let's bring balance into your life. So the Don't Be Asked podcast is bringing ideas for how you can expand your courageous moments. And this episode with Donna is a beautiful solution for getting back to what's most you, because when you know what it is that you're fighting for, it is so much easier to be courageous. Donna Wellbeing Markham is the wildly successful young health industry exec who left it all to be a full-time coach, running retreats for professional women facing their own something's not working moment. Here she's talking me through the ins and outs of retreats. It is super timely because I feel as though execs everywhere are talking about retreats right now at a time that the conference comeback is still a little shaky and Zoom alone is not enough for some to connect. Honestly, it's no wonder that retreats are on the rise. And this one, Donna's Disequilibrium, is a coach-led retreat where questions hold the answers. So Donna shares with us how you can get a little of that self-care on your own and why you'd want to. So for this chat, I'm at home near Sydney Harbour on Gadigal country and Donna is on Wurundjeri country in Victoria. I think our connection to country is a beautiful reminder to celebrate our unique perspectives and our common purpose. We're connected but different but so very connected. I'm grateful to the custodians and the elders of the Gadigal. I'm grateful to be nourished here, to raise my kids and weave my work here, to be sharing these conversations with you from here. Hopefully you'll be able to head outside of your four walls to breathe in fresh air wherever you are as you listen in with us. This is a chat chock full of nurturing takeaways. Why were you drawn to retreats?
I think, so I've done a couple myself over the years and I've always really loved the time to nourish myself. But I remember driving home one day, it was at night and I was on the freeway and I'd just gotten off the phone from one of my girlfriends who was talking to me about some of the things that are going on at home for her and in the workplace. She's got 3 children. She works in health. And I've had that conversation with her many times and with many other colleagues and friends. And I just thought, why do we keep doing this to ourselves? Why don't we just take some time to look after ourselves? And so I just thought, what if I could create a way or an experience that gives women who are like me or like her, my friend, or like many of the colleagues and other women I talk to, just some of that precious space and time to rest, reflect, restore, because you can't do that when you're in the thick of it. So I thought, we're so good at nurturing others. What if I could create a space that nurtured these women and gave them the time to think about that? So I think that's the why. Yeah, that's why. Because I just sometimes I think you need to physically remove yourself and give yourself some space and time to actually do the deep thinking.
Yeah, okay. That makes sense to me. But tell me, what's the difference between, so a yoga retreat, you would go away and you come back a bit more flexible, a meditation retreat, you go away and you breathe a bit better and you maybe focus on a couple of specific situations that you want to work on. But this kind of retreat is different because you're working with largely professional women. So I guess what I'm kind of grappling with is, how is your kind of retreat? How is a retreat for professional women different to those kinds of retreats? And how is it different to, say, going on a holiday with a group of friends?
Yeah. Great question. And I guess that's something I've been thinking about in terms of what's my point of difference?
Yeah, sure.
I think, so I've run one before and I've got more coming.
Exciting.
Yeah, thank you. I think what some of the, like, because I think the experience of the women that came on the first one is a good place to start in terms of how it's different. And I think the fundament, so I put a coaching framework on this retreat. So I am there with these women almost as a fellow traveler. And by coaching, I mean that I've set the program up with the fundamental belief that these women already have the insights within them, but they just need some clever design and clever questions and the space to unlock all of that. So I think the unique bit is I'm not there teaching a skill. I'm not there demonstrating a skill or a technique. I'm not bringing in some expert who can talk to them about how to do this stuff. I've just created a really clever, well, I think it's clever anyway, but a carefully designed program that allows them the space and time to work out what works for them, because, you know, the focus is self-care, but that means many things to many different people. So I've designed it in a way that I'm aiming to meet the women where they are at and unlocking what's relevant to them. And girlfriends are fabulous, and weekends away with girlfriends are essential, but we often pile on advice and answer questions for each other. I don't do any of that in this retreat. This is I think in this context, if I were to be giving advice, I would be taking away their own power and answers. Does that make sense?
It makes so much sense. And as a coach, I know that I've just written down as you're speaking, you know, questions are the answer. Questions
absolutely.
are the answer. They're powerful questions.
Yes.
Change everything. They can move everything for people. They can unlock the world.
Yes.
What are some of your favorite questions to ask people?
So I think one of the questions that at the moment that's coming up for me a lot, because often when you say to people, what do you want? They can't actually tell you. They're so in the thick of what's like the current, I can't even imagine getting out of that in a different way of being. So one of the really powerful questions I love is, well, what don't you want? And then they're like, oh, well, I don't want this, I don't want these hours, I don't want this, I don't want to not be available for my family, you know, and they just rattle off, and you go, well, what's happening right now? And they're like, oh, well, all of that. And in that, so what don't you want? What's the cost of continuing to do what you're doing? And I think when people stop and think about the cost of continuing to say yes to something when probably they should be saying no, I find that really powerful. So rather than what do you want, well, actually, what don't you want? And then what's the cost of continuing to be as you are? And I'm finding that realization is almost a penny drop that goes, oh, I can't keep doing this. Like I can't. I've got to actually start to honor myself now. I love that question. And it's it's vastly different to what's the problem? Because what's the problem has such a different presentation from people. They can, you know, people can talk for hours on what the issue is and what the roadblocks are, but what don't you want is so different. And it kind of goes to a deeper level of needs, wants, desires, as opposed to getting stuck in our heads with the technicalities of, as you say, or the problem or whatever that might be.
Do you find any commonality with where people are getting stuck at the moment?
I guess, you know, in the context of the retreats in particular, and then there's coaching that I'm doing either side of the retreats, the commonality is very much, you know, I guess the women that are selecting to come on these sorts of things by default seem to be nurturers and caregivers. So the commonality is that they're kind of leaving the scraps for themselves. And there's this sense of I should. So I should do this. I should say yes to this. And having a lot of difficulty putting boundaries out and feeling okay about prioritizing their own self-care and their own well-being was a screaming commonality amongst these particular women.
Interesting. I'm going to ask you to elaborate. So you mentioned that, you know, you just can't do the work that you do here, you can't do anywhere else. Why do you think that is? Why is it?
I think, I mean, obviously, and you would know this as a coach, there's a lot you can do in a one-on-one coaching session. But, you know, you'll rock up having done your morning routine, you know, you'll have something before, you'll have something after. It's not necessarily time and space to let stuff simmer. And I think what I've tried to do is create a really safe space where people are choosing to let their guard down, are choosing to be vulnerable, are choosing to admit some stuff to themselves and maybe even out loud to the other women. And then some space to think about what they're going to do with that. So that you continue to hold them in that vulnerable space in a way to think about, okay, well, gosh, this realization or this insight's come, and now I actually want to do something about it, and I've got some space to think about it. And I'm just not sure that you could. I think when you're in life and you're in your own home and you're in context, you can get glimmers of that, absolutely, but not. I think this takes time. Some of the women said to me just how exhausted they were, in a good way, but just that heavy thinking is fatiguing. And so to actually just to not have to then go, you know, the jarring pull back to life, they could actually just sit in a beautiful environment and let that sit and, you know, have a nap or read a book or, you know, just sit and have a cup of tea and chat it through with another woman. So I think that's another reason of why this is difficult to replicate with another, you know, a wellbeing retreat, if you like. I'm not saying it wouldn't with another coaching orientated type retreat, but if it's a yoga retreat or a meditation retreat, like there's still a lot of that goes on, but there's a lot more purposeful questioning. Like you said, the questions have the answers. And I think one of the other principles I had in going into this is that I wanted the silence to do the heavy lifting.
Yeah, beautiful.
So actually creating that space for that silence to occur, which again, you can't often get when you're in your own home, because there's either physically other people about or there's just the to-do list that's hovering around every room you walk past.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you walk us through a little bit of your journey? So you were hugely successful in your career. What was it about your journey, do you think, that left you wanting for something like this? Tell me a bit about your journey.
Okay, so I'll start from where I was and go backwards, I think. So it's only been about 8 months, I think, Kath, that I've started my own business. I was working as an executive for the Department of Health in health. And it's a good job, good team, you know, kind of all of those things. But I guess there had been, you know, the pandemic, which has had a significant impact on many. But I think this hankering had probably been there for a long time. So my own probably personal self-care journey, if you like, started when I was in my mid-20s and my first marriage broke down, and I felt like I'd completely had the rug pulled out from under me. We'd been together for nearly 10 years, but married for only 2 months, and he came home and told me he was in love with someone else. Been together since we were late teens, so my whole identity was wrapped up in being his partner, and it was an incredibly painful experience. But you know, with life's journey, I can certainly see all the silver linings that have come from that. And I started a journey with a counsellor at the time, and it was really her that introduced me to the concept of self-care. And she spoke about self-care, couple care, and family care. At the time, I didn't have kids, but obviously we all have a family of some descript, whether they're by blood or birth or whatever. You know, whoever your kind of close unit is, your crew. And so over the years, I keep coming back to that. And so I have a very strong belief, and I make decisions based on this, that if I'm not okay, then my partner relationship is not okay. And if we as a unit are not okay, then our family is not okay. And it's taken a long time and a lot of practice to believe that and to make conscious choices in that order, really, as best I can. But I've just found out that if I don't do it, everybody suffers, including me. I don't, by giving to the family first doesn't actually make them any better, because I'm not okay. I've got nothing to give. So I think over the years through my career, I have had a very successful career, and I've only just turned 40. So I sat around my first executive table when I was in my late 20s. Like, I know I haven't followed it's not a traditional path at all. I've worked hard at that, and I've made some good choices, and I've had some great support around me. But I think, and I've loved it and I've enjoyed it, but I think what always gave me a feel, if you like, was just that watching the growth in others. So leading by example, but actually watching others grow and develop and fulfill their own potential. So probably as a leader, I've always had a coaching style, although I now also reflect on, I probably did a lot more mentoring than I did coaching. With the focus being now on the questions as opposed to the mentoring of the advice giving kind of approach. And so I guess when I started my most recent role in government, I knew I probably wouldn't be in that space in the longer term. I think the pandemic probably got me to think about, probably fast-tracked a decision for change. But I probably would never have imagined that this was the change I would have made.
Is that right?
Pre-pandemic. I think there was something, I don't know, maybe, and I know I speak to lots of people who are just like, what's my purpose? What am I here for? So some of it was that sort of question. But even, I think if you probably ask some of my colleagues, they probably said, no, this is exactly what Donna was always doing. So, well-being and self-care has always been something I have done in my leadership roles, but I ended up, part of my role in government was leading the Wellbeing Centre for healthcare workers. So, I've obviously had a natural inclination towards either the coaching and empowering, but also the focus on self-care and well-being, because I actually don't believe, if you come back to my principle of self-care, couple care, family care, like work comes in somewhere later on, but you just simply cannot give to others what you don't have for yourself. So I've been passionate about that for a long time, and I think when I just decided to make some decisions about how I spend my time, I had a coaching session at the beginning of some long service leave. I took 5 weeks to go, what the hell am I going to do? I need to change. What is it? And I had a coaching session with a good friend and colleague. And as part of that one, that was the first day of my leave. And, we were talking, and he said, I can't remember exactly what he asked me, but I said to him, I think I want to start my own business. And then I was like, quick, grab those words, stick them back in. Shit, I've said it out loud now. And I was terrified and like, I think I've just got to do it. And I have a beautiful partner, Daniel, who's really supportive. And I just thought, look, if I've got to do this. I've made lots of courageous decisions along the way in my life, and they have always been the right thing to do. Doesn't mean they're not easy, they're hard, but it's always paid off. I've never regretted it. And so I just thought, this is just me doing something brave. And whilst my passion has been self-care and well-being, I'm an occupational therapist, I've been a healthcare leader, like running retreats for women it's really different. And so I had to fight a lot of that. What do you know about doing that? That sort of, I had to fight a lot of that self-doubt and imposter syndrome to get there. But here I am. There's been lots of other bits along the way, Kath, in terms of my journey, but I think there's been my own self-development, if you like, and my own journey that's helped me prioritize my own self-care. So really, I guess I'm trying to create a space and environment now where I can create some ripples and hopefully encourage other people to make similar choices about looking after themselves as well.
I think that in itself is such a courageous thing to do. It's not the norm. It's not how we're conditioned.
No, it's not.
Can you tell me about the courageous decisions you've made? Did you know at the time that they were, how courageous did you feel making courageous decisions? Did it really get you to dig deep?
Oh yeah, significantly. I've made lots. I mean, I think my first big courageous decision was when that marriage fell apart. I just remember saying to myself, Donna, sink or swim. I'm like, fuck it, I'm going to swim. Like, you know, I'm not going to let this, you know, heartache and trauma define me. And I mean, it hasn't defined me, but it certainly has, you know, it sent me on a path that I wouldn't have any other way now. Like it has shaped, you know, my future, but it's not a negative thorn in my side kind of thing. So I think my first courageous decision was, I'm going to learn and grow from this. This is awful. I could sit here and wallow, but no, I'm going to understand as much as I can about what's going on for me and do my best to make different decisions, or at least be more in tune with myself going forward. And then I stumbled again. I got married a second time and had to make another courageous decision when I actually realized that wasn't the right decision for me either. So made some courageous decisions there about, you know, there was an element of sadness as, how did I I thought I was okay. How did I get here? Well, that's all right. You just need to make a new decision, Donna. You know, you make certain decisions at a certain time, and now it's time to make some new decisions. And so the courageous decision at that point was to say, no, this isn't quite right, and let's call it a day. And I think, so there's been lots of personal courageous decisions. I mean, more recently, my partner and I have been together nearly 10 years and talked on and off about whether or not we should get married. And we kind of decided we would. And then we both said to one another, actually, I don't know that we want to.
Yeah.
So, you know, in some ways, let's not. Like, I love you, I want to spend my life with you, but let's not get married.
Yeah.
So even just the you know, the courage to have that conversation and say that sort of stuff out loud.
Yeah.
Career-wise, probably my first big leadership role took a lot of courage. I was working in a senior clinical type role, and I had someone ring me and say, there's this job going, I think you should apply. And I'm like, oh, it was a director role. I'm like, I'm just here doing my thing in the emergency department. That's like, got plenty to challenge me. I'm enjoying this. It's like, thanks, but no thanks. I can't do that. And well, that's an interesting phone conversation. Put the phone down. And then a couple of weeks later, another phone call from someone else saying, Donna, I think you should really consider applying for this. And I gave her the same answer and hung up and like, oh, maybe I should think about this. Like, they're giving you a nudge. And I thought, I can't do that job, but they think I can. So maybe I just need to put my own shit aside and believe what they believe. Yeah. And so I applied for it and I got it. Yeah. I did it for 6 months. Then my boss resigned, and the chief operating officer of our hospital said to me, Donna, will you act in that role for a couple of months while we recruit? And I was like, Jesus, like, I can't do that. I just got that one. I'm not sure if that's what I should be doing, or should, you know, I'm still waiting for you to tell me you've changed your mind about that role. And anyway, so huge amounts of, and your question earlier about how I felt courageous decisions for me are terrifying ones, but there's something inside me that just knows they're the right thing to do. And so I've developed enough skill and awareness over the years, I suppose, to acknowledge all of those voices, but not to necessarily let them dictate what I do. So, you know, there's often lots of fear and lots of tears when I make courageous decisions. And the most recent decision to walk away from an executive role and do something really different and start my own career was terrifying, and there was lots of tears. But it was just that moment of I can't keep soldiering on anymore. It's time to do, you know, I'm worthy. It's you know, and it's time to make some change. So
I was talking with somebody the other day, Donna, about, you know, the difference between kind of intuition that you are on a path that's right and you need to take this crazy risk, as opposed to the intuition that I really should buy that lottery ticket. You know, like, I guess the question I have for you is how have you learned to trust those gut feel responses that say, this is the right thing? It may not be sensible, but this is the right thing. How have you learned to trust that?
Yeah, great question. My trust in that instinct or gut was really rattled the second marriage, really, because when I finally got to the point where I realized it wasn't right for me, the realization was that you have not listened to your instinct and you have not trusted yourself. And there was this sadness that came with that, because it was there and I overrode it and I didn't listen to it. So how have I learned to trust it? I think I've gotten pretty good at listening to the physical signs in my body in terms of anxiety and where it sits in my gut or my chest or whatever. So I tune in to that now. I don't necessarily accept that it means danger and run. I think it just means tune in. So I've sort of, because I think sometimes we you can interpret that anxiety or fear as get out. And that might be the case sometimes, but not always. So it's just my early warning system telling me to tune in. So I suppose that's the first thing I do, is I trust my body enough to know that I need to listen to that. And then I try and think about what my head's telling me and what my heart's telling me. And if I'm processing thoughts that are a pros and cons list, then I know that's probably my head talking. Whereas what I really need to do is listen to what my heart or my gut's telling me. And so it is much harder to do that. I think, coming back to what you asked me before in terms of a question, one of the things I ask myself is, what's the cost? So there's we're very good at coming up with the reasons, the yes and no, pros and cons of a decision. So, for example, what are the reasons to stay in my job or take another executive role? Lots of great reasons. What are the reasons not to? Lots of great reasons. But none of them actually help me answer the question. Whereas when I ask myself, what's the cost of saying yes to continuing down that kind of path for now? Well, the cost was that I'd have to push aside this burning kind of passion to do something in self-care and well-being space. And so then the next question is, well, are you okay with that cost? I'm like, hell no. So I think that's how I've probably gotten better at trusting my gut or instinct in terms of what's the path, and also accepting that I'm not trying to find the destination. I just need to know that I'm moving towards something. So it's sort of a check-in now when I'm faced with a decision, do I, don't I? Well, where's that likely to take you, and what does it mean you won't be able to do if you go that way? And are you okay with that? And if there's good alignment with what I want and it's taking me in that direction, then great, proceed until apprehended, or until you need to make a new decision. But if it's likely to take away from what really matters, then don't.
And these kind of reflections certainly cannot happen, with the chaos and the noise of every day.
No. Hence another great reason to be away.
Absolutely.
And I think too, when you've got other people around you sharing some of their own insights or their own what their gut's telling them, it kind of gives you permission to listen to your own, I think, sometimes too.
Beautiful. The sectors where there are a lot of people who are doing good for the community, or people who are giving of themselves for the greater good, not just for the paycheck. I find that particularly, we've been through an especially traumatic time globally, and where people work in areas that they give to people and solve that problem for the greater good. I find that there's this real challenge with people recognizing wellness as something that they need to do right now, because they're so excited about what they're doing and what they're, the gift that they're giving to humanity by this little task that they have in their job. They're passionate about delivering their work. And so they do tend to brush aside the need to do that kind of preemptive wellness stuff. What are your thoughts on that?
I agree.
Yeah.
I see it all the time. And I think, and it's, as you say, it's not just health, but I guess social community sectors more broadly, where you are you are there in service of others. So you're probably already an innate nurturer and caregiver.
Exactly.
So you're conditioned to give to others, and not very good at giving to yourself. But I think what comes with that is that you then carry the weight of all the people that you're there to help.
True.
And that can become overwhelming. And anything that you give to yourself, I think people feel is then taking away from all those people in need that you're there in service of, or to serve, or, you know, whatever it is you're doing. So I think we get out of whack with this sense of, well, I'm responsible. I have to keep going. I have to. I can't let these people down. And if I were to take any of that energy for myself, well, I'm selfish. Like, how could I? There's no time for that. I just have to keep giving. So I think we do ourselves a disservice by not recognizing that unless we give to ourselves, we cannot continue to give to others. And I mean, people are burning out left, right, and center because they're exhausted, and they are carrying this weight of responsibility. And I don't think we're very good at giving the same level of care to ourselves as what we would give to others.
It's so true. It's so true. But Donna, how do you suggest people recognize it before it happens? You know, once you hit burnout, you can't avoid that sign. You know, it's there, it's in your face. And when it happens, so often people look back and say, oh, in hindsight, there are some signs.
I know.
How do you recommend that people see those signs before they hit the brick wall?
Oh, look, it's a great question, Kath. It's something I grapple with because you can, when you look back in hindsight, see the signs. Your friends and people around you can probably watch you and see a train wreck about to happen. You can have fabulous coaches who ask you great questions, and you can admit stuff out loud. But unless you're ready, there's got to be a readiness piece. And I don't know the answer necessarily to creating that readiness. I mean, I'm trying to create ripples by planting seeds and watering them occasionally. And, you know, maybe a ripple will have, you know, it'll just be that moment where someone is at the right time in the right place to receive a message or a little nugget of gold and go, oh, God, I don't want that to be, I don't want to go there. But there has to be a moment of readiness. And I think whether you're a coach or a friend or a family member, if you've got the privileged position to be there at that moment of readiness, then I think part of what you can do is just to say, well, you know, what are you going to do about it? Like, it comes back to are you okay with the cost of not caring for yourself, of not doing anything? I don't know how easy it is to recognize it on your own. Like, if you're just beavering away in your own busy world, I think it's really difficult to get out of your own head and out of your own way and stop and look and go, oh yeah, like, I think we get so, because it's incremental too, like it's not an overnight change. So how you stop it, notice it, I think is tricky. I think I don't know if I'm answering your question at all. I think it's really tricky. I think if it was an easy answer, we'd all be doing it.
So true. I think that we actually have this really deep responsibility to be listening more. To friends, to colleagues, to team members. I think that we almost are preconditioned to say me too. You know, like someone tells you a story about what's going on for them, you're like, oh my God, that happened to me too. Let me tell you about blah, blah, blah. As opposed to listening to what you're hearing and kind of delving into a little bit further, and allowing those revelations to happen because you've spent time enough. I mean, as you would know, that's the beauty of the coaching relationship. You're not doing that, oh yeah, that happened to me. You're actually doing the tell me more, say more. And people say stuff, they're like, oh my God, I didn't even know. And then they'll say, gosh, it's not rocket science, is it? Yes.
You know, it's not often big things, but it's just the time and space to listen. I think you're spot on, Kath, and
totally
allowing those meaningful connections.
Yeah.
And I wonder if in the workplace we just get so busy with, especially if you're in a nurturing, caregiving kind of a role.
Yes.
You want to fix things. You want to fix problems.
Totally.
You want to take away people's discomfort.
Yes.
So stopping and listening and letting and sitting with someone in their discomfort is going to be very uncomfortable.
For sure. There's this story that I heard years ago, and I use it a lot, you know, in lunch and learn sessions and things. And it's this tiny story. So there's a guy sitting on a veranda, and he's sitting next to him. He's got his dog next to him and his mate, and the dog's whining. And the guy says, "What's wrong with your dog?" The mate says, "What's wrong with your dog?" And the guy says, "I think he's sitting on a nail." And the mate's like, "Why doesn't he get off?" And the guy says, "I guess it doesn't bother him that much." And I think that so many of us have these things that we whine about, but unless someone's actually listening, unless we're listening for ourselves, or somebody else is saying, "You know what, that's been a bit of an issue on an ongoing basis. Maybe you should spend a bit more time with that." I think it's really important that listening, stopping the impulse to problem solve. And I know, you know, Donna, when people go into coaching, people often say, "I love coaching. I really love coaching. I want to do more of it." And they'll ask questions about becoming, you know, doing more coaching or becoming a coach. One of the hardest things, I think, when you do start coaching is turning off that kind of impulse to solve problems. How did you find that? How did you find the change?
Great question. It was challenging. I mean, I've done my formal certification, so it was kind of, we got lots and lots of practice in a really safe environment to do that. And we all struggled with that. We're all like, "Oh, I just want to give you advice right now." But we'd also been given really strict instructions not to. And so I think we because we had been told not to, we didn't. And then we saw the benefit of letting that person go where they needed to go. And there was that realize of, when I give advice, I take away their power and their ability to discover those insights that are already within. Because my answers are my answers and my solutions. They might not work for someone else.
Completely.
So I think that it's the silence and the listening. I think I just, when I find myself, I'm like, "You're in the coaching mindset right now." Just pause. Let the silence do the heavy lifting. And I think I've done it enough now just to see how valuable that is, that I'm, you know, there are times when advice is required and I'm very clear. I'd like to put my mentoring advice hat on now. Are you comfortable with that? And you know, but I try and do that rarely. And I would only do that where it's pretty context specific, where I have expertise and insight for, you know, something quite specific. But generally I will try not to. And even with my partner at home, I'll say to him, "Do you want coach, Donna, or do you want partner? You know, what do you want from me right now? What do you need?" Because the coaching mind, you know, it's great when you're in a formal coaching session, you've got that hat on, you're in that mindset, but it's not the norm. It takes practice and skills. So I think when you're sitting down and having a coffee with a girlfriend, or you know, it's not you've got to be much more conscious about it. But in the coaching space, I've just seen how powerful it is to not give advice and how quickly you can shut someone's thinking down when you do.
Beautiful. I think that my kind of we've talked a bit about having space for decisions and having space for wellness. What are your thoughts on meditation?
So I'm a yogi, if you like. Yoga is my thing, which is more of a moving meditation. It is a fundamental part of my life. I know that yoga is not for everyone, but I think some form of a mindful practice is essential. I think unless you can stop and kind of ground yourself and get rid of the noise up here, for some that's going for a run, for some that's a walk in the bush, for some that's playing with their dog or whatever it might be, and for some it is that meditative state. I think it's absolutely essential. And the more people I talk to, and the more people I think, gosh, you seem really grounded, you've got it together, it's because they do some sort of mindful practice in whatever that means for them. So I don't do seated silent meditations, although it's on my, I would like to do more of that kind of bucket list. I'm just trying not to put too much pressure on myself because I'm not yet. Like yoga's my thing, and I recognize that is a mindful, because it's, for me, it's the breath and the movement. So that's my kind of meditation practice, in a moving sort of meditation. But it's like it's like hitting the reset button. Just get out of your head, empty your thoughts, and just stuff, then insights just pop up randomly because you've gotten out of your own way, really.
When do you do it? How do you logistically prioritize it?
Oh, okay. So I get up at 5 a.m. I know that's not for everybody. I have a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old who are early risers, and they get up at 6 a.m. And over the last 2 years, my partner and I, because we do have, very intentional conversations about self-care, couple care, family care, we've had to, we've talked and made a plan for what works for our family. So we both get up at 5. He goes and does his thing. I do my yoga. My studio throughout COVID started recording classes live. So it's so much more accessible for me to do the classes I love with the teachers I love in the comfort of my own home. So, I do it in my room for 45 minutes in the morning. And then sometimes the kids wake early and they know now they can come in, but they have to be quiet. Mommy's doing yoga. So they can lie on the bed, or they can lie next to me. But they have to be quiet. And I figure, look, I'm teaching them self-care right now, and I'm explaining to them, this is my time. This is really important. It makes my body feel good.
Yeah, great.
So that's when I do it. And I try and get to the studio once, maybe twice a week at a class time that suits me. But that's just, the time that I am more of a morning person. I prefer not to get up that early, but I go to bed early at the other end of the day. It's just become such a non-negotiable for me in my life that that's when I get up and do it. And we as a family plan for that. I think before I had my first child, my partner, he's always been fabulous, but I think it was since having kids that we've both really understood how important that self-care is. So he's
I love hearing that, because some people go the other way.
No, I probably did go the other way for the first maybe 8 months. And I got to a point it was like, this is not sustainable. I can't do this.
Yeah.
And so we started to claw it back. And it got to a point where he was just saying to me, rather than, what do you need, or what are you going to do this week? He's like, when are you doing yoga? Like,
beautiful.
When are you going?
Beautiful.
Because I think he could see how Bennett. So I needed that nudge again, because you've got a little baby, and I should be enjoying this. They should be beautiful. I should love spending time with them. No, I want to pull my hair out. I'm going crazy. So it's been over a number of years, and I recognize I'm in a very we have a very healthy communication style in our relationship. I appreciate not all couples can communicate on that level, but as a family we plan that, and that's when I do it.
I love that. It's beautiful. Donna, if somebody is whoever hears this, if they are thinking the retreat sounds amazing, it's a little bit way off, what can I do today? If someone had 10 or 15 minutes to do some sort of self-care, what would you recommend?
Look, I think I'd start with just by writing down a list of things that make you feel good. So write down a list of all of the things that you enjoy and that make you feel good, from creative things to exercise to cooking, gardening, whatever. What are the things that you enjoy that fill your bucket? And then ask yourself, well, how much of that am I currently doing in my week? Like, have a look at your week and go, well, how often am I doing those things? And probably most people will say either not at all or not enough. And then I would say, okay, well, am I okay with that?
Yes.
Probably the answer will be no, I'm not okay with that.
Yeah.
So then I would just say, well, where can I find time? Like, where can I find time? Small 15 minutes here or half an hour there. if I've said this makes me feel good and it's important, where can I find time to fit this in? And just, I mean, there's lots of great stuff out at the moment around habits, and I'm reading the Atomic Habits at the moment.
How addictive is it?
Yeah, it's fabulous. So I can't remember right now, and I'm talking about it, what the term is, but when you kind of, back end
habit stacking.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So is there another routine in your day where you get a coffee that you could do 10 minutes of some sort of mindfulness or meditation, or that you do get up, is that 20 minutes of sleep really going to make you feel that much better versus 20 minutes of movement? Or can you do a walk and talk meeting? Or so just kind of trying to ask yourself where if this is really important to me, and I believe this is important, I've got this beautiful list now, a self-care menu that I can pick from. Where could I find time in my week to do that? And then I think the other fundamental bit is the accountability. So talk to someone, tell them you're going to do it, ask them to help you, or if you depending on who you live with at home, have a family conversation or a household conversation about, well, this is what I'd really like to do. Can you help me? And what would you like to do? And how do we, as a household, kind of make this happen? How do we work this in together so that you don't feel like you're fighting everybody else's needs as well?
Isn't it amazing how even young kids are so responsive to helping you achieve those goals, however small they might be? It's beautiful.
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, what a beautiful way to lead by example and teach them the importance of self-care at such a young age, that actually your needs are important and my needs are important. And
for sure. Donna, do you have one last question? I thought that was my last question. But I've got one last question if you've got a sec.
Absolutely.
It's actually around when you work primarily with professional women, but I'm curious, in your experience, when you're working with people as a coach or on retreat, what kind of percentage of the stuff that they work through for the big shifts is work stuff, and what percentage is kind of the personal stuff?
Great question. I'm not sure you can ever separate them. And so they might come with a work problem, which is really just a personal problem dressed up, or vice versa. When I say a problem, not a problem, but we are who we are. We're driven by our values and our beliefs. And we take them into the workplace, and we take them into our relationships, and we take them into our friendships. So I think, to answer your question in the most black and white way I can, I think everything stems from our own values and beliefs. And so if you call that the personal, then, I think that's the space I want to be in anyway. I'm as a coach, I'm interested in that deep and meaningful connection. So I'm interested in engaging with people who are able to really tap into those deep values and beliefs, because that's what drives behaviours and decisions. And so they'll apply that to a workplace decision, or they'll apply that to a home decision. And often the decisions we make in the workplace have an impact on our home life, because we do or don't have good boundaries around our work. I've given you a long answer to that question, but I think it's both, and I don't think we can artificially separate the two. Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. Donna, where can people find you? Where's the best place for them to find you? At the moment, LinkedIn. I just started. I'm just doing the thing, and eventually I'm sure there'll be a website one day, and Disequilibrium will be the thing to search. But the business name is Disequilibrium. It's the sweet spot where growth occurs, because from some of the stories I've told you, that's the greatest growth for me has always occurred in the times that have felt most wobbly, and where the disequilibrium is, if you like. But at the moment, probably LinkedIn. My email is donna@disequilibrium.com.au. Beautiful. Yeah. Fantastic. It's been an absolute joy to speak with you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Kath. I believe that women do help other women. I hope that this episode has empowered you to question your willingness to go last. I hope that you will embrace balance, and I'm also hoping that you will help me to help other women to do the same. So how can you help? Show your support
for the work. Subscribe and review the podcast here where you're listening. Follow the Goddess of Balance on Instagram to catch some cheeky behind the scenes and extras. Connect with me on LinkedIn and share the posts with your network. That would be sensational. If you have enjoyed this program, this episode, you will no doubt love my group coaching program. You got to find all the links to these in the little written blurb for this episode. Thank you, my friend, for normalizing balance with me. We are raising performance and reputations, wellness and equality. Together, we're creating positive change for working women, starting with you. Sincerely, I thank you for being part of the movement.